honored to follow Christine at Harvard, who really did all the protocols to learn how to treat skin of color. I wish I could say I was smart enough to do it on my own. It was not me. I choose my mentors very, very carefully, and I'm great at that. You know, we always talk about treating skin of color as this is some obscure people we treat. You know, in America today, look at these major cities. Over half the population skin of color today. Even Minneapolis, which you would think would be a strong Caucasian population, 35%. I live in Washington, D.C., 67%. So this is not something that we don't have to learn. You know, we see 85 women a day in my practice. A lot of them coming from places out of the city where you should be there treating them, not me. You know, part of my conversation will be a little commercial. Make sure your practice welcomes people of color. Do you see pictures on a wall that represent what they like? Do you see staff that represents who they are? You know, do you have before and after pictures that show skin of color? I see so many patients in my office say, I didn't feel comfortable going someplace else. Well, work on it. If you're going to make money, revenue on skin of color, then, you know, hire somebody of color. You know, I love skiing, but don't always have skiing pictures. There's other options you can do. I'm going the wrong way. There's a button. There we go. Thomas Fitzpatrick, all of his dermatologists know who Thomas is. We're talking about, in my presentations, treating really skin types 5 and 6s. 4s kind of range into the diode game you can play and other games, but 5 and 6 is what we're talking about. I gotta find an easier way to do this. Thank you. Pigment. The darker we are, the more our pigment is dispersed upward in the epidermis. Skin type 6 have pigment in the stratum corneum. The pigment is what's reflecting light, absorbing light, creating heat. So treating lighter skin patients, much easier. Their pigment is down the basal layer in membranes. My pigment's all the way up to probably a fifth up from the top. And then the darker people have all, in our dead cells, have pigment. So you got to be aware of the skin and analogy of that. And it's not just ethnicity and race. You know, first of all, you're treating not just the person in front of you, you're treating their ancestors too. You see many patients out here who might look, you know, skin type 4, who have a very dark father, or a lighter mother, or their grandmother was African. Unless you take that into account, you're treating probably too aggressively. You got to be conservative in your treatment. I'm considered one of the world's experts of laser on skin of color, and I bet I treat more conservatively than anybody in this room. But I don't know their DNA. And I make no assumptions. We treat 85 women a day, all women of color. And I treat conservatively. As I tell my staff, everybody wants better results, but no one's going to thank you for a blister. So you got to be very, very careful of how you treat. And we don't know yet treating skin of color. We are such a diverse population. I am 44% European. I'm a mixture of Sierra Leone, Cameroonian. So you look at me, my DNA is different. My wife's happens to have Japanese and half black. My children are a third, but we all look the same. And our skin's gonna react so much differently because of, even though our skin color is the same, our DNA is different, and you have to take that into account. And melanocytes are so much more susceptible to heat injury, scar injury, cold injury. The gold standard by far is the Nd:YAG laser. There's a lot of other lasers out in the market. If I could take away IPL on skin of color, I've taken away 80% of the side effects I see in my office. But the gold standard, but there are a lot of lasers. My wonderful speakers mentioned diode, alexandrite, and they have FDA approval. In fact, I helped to get FDA approval for a diode laser for skin of color. But we use Nd:YAG consistently in our practice because of the safety profile it gives, because this is what we can do. Consistently, we can treat any skin color in the world. Long post durations. Thank you for giving me that shout out. You know, I'm a believer of long post duration. Imagine you had a bucket of energy in front of you, and you fill the bucket with fluence. How fast you pour the bucket or how slow you pour the bucket is the post-duration. If I pull the bucket very fast, my skin heats up fast, causing damage. If I pour the bucket slowly, my skin heats up slowly, making cooling more efficient. So long post-durations make cooling more efficient in the laser, and it gives you a safety profile in treating skin of color. And we have to maximize cooling, whether it's adjunct cooling with a Zimmer machine or ice, anything we can. Heat is our enemy, cold is our friend. And in my practice, we minimize variables. I don't allow my nurses to just pick every direction. We have wavelength to pick, we have fluence and post-duration. If I'm trying to juggle those two, fluence and post-duration, with every patient, I won't become an expert. So for brown skin people, skin types 4 through 6, we treat at 40 milliseconds period. And then become an expert on fluence alone. Because all the nuances in this, if you keep juggling two numbers, it's very hard to gain expertise. So try to minimize variables. There's no doubt on light skin patients that perifollicular erythema and edema is the endpoint, but that's not true for skin of color. It's too inconsistent to receive that. So the endpoint for skin of color is your expertise, your knowledge, treating safely. Because a lot of patients don't get perifollicular erythema and edema in darker skin patients. So make sure, I use that as a guide for skin types 1 through 3, maybe 4-ish, but 5 and 6, I'm not looking for that at all. I'm just treating conservatively with expertise and experience. And if you are doing test spots, wait for a minimum of 2 days. This was a patient we did in research. Every square was perfect. He came in, the next day his skin was perfect. He came in a month later and showed me this. I said, what happened? He said, day 3, I got a blister. That's when we realized that we can have delay in blistering, a delay in side effects in skin of color. So make sure that if you are doing test spots to pause before you assume it's safe. They mentioned, there's no better treatment besides lasers for PFB, because it not only gets rid of unwanted hair, it treats the bumps, the color, discoloration. You're changing lives. And people don't get PFB because they're not shaving meticulously or not spending the time doing it. It's because we have curly hair that grows back in. It's a phenomenal treatment of changing lives. There's no doubt that there are many diodes out here. It was touched on by the previous speakers. They're using suction, scanning, fast motion, long pulse. And, skin types, 4-ish, even a little 5-ish, yeah, maybe, but I would rather be overly safe with Nd:YAG laser. And I've got all of these lasers in my practice. And we use them for light-skinned Asians, light-skinned Latin. But anybody with African descent, no matter how light they are, we are airing to the Nd:YAG laser. This is an example of our research using diode effectively. So we're not saying it can't be done, but can I do it 100 out of 100? And that's the question I always ask myself. We see so many patients. If I can't do it consistently, I can't do it. And there's some new novice ones out here also. There's the microsecond Nd:YAG that everyone's using. There's the a low fluence, high frequency alexandrite that people are using. The long-term studies have not been out there yet in terms of, is this really long-term hair removal, or is this hair delay? So I don't have enough experience with them to really give them my opinion. I do have an opinion, but I won't share it. But this, again, is what we can do with Nd:YAG lasers on any skin color, any ethnicity, and any person. So treat conservatively. Don't be your worst enemy. If you're doing test spots, do overlapping test spots. That's how we treat. And the part in the center is the one that gets 4 different fluences at a time. So don't just do one spot. Make sure they're overlapping. Meticulous technique. Skin of color patients, we tan more easily than Caucasians. So assume our skin is tanned at all times. We keep our tan all winter. So we never think about tan skin when we're treating brown skin. Just remember, we tan more easily. You burn easier than us. but we tan easier. And meticulous pre- and post-care instructions. Thank you.